Hell's Paradise, the show that sparked countless arguments amongst Twitter users who definitely know what compositing is. Definitely. It's the newest production by Studio Mappa and only 4 episodes are out as of right now, but still this Kaori Makita directed show has faced a lot of slander online, especially within certain groups of people. And this negative reception is fairly unnecessary in my opinion. Some of the biggest issues that people have with this show include the high animation director count that every episode has, and the resulting inconsistent animation, as well as the supposedly awful compositing. And we'll talk about both of these topics. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hell's Paradise is a decent looking show. Here I said it. Now in my ranking of adjectives, decent is above average and below good. It's like passable but on steroids. It's a positive word, that's for sure. Hell's Paradise looks decent. Obviously, this is not a Chainsawman or even a Jujutsu Kaisen. It's not an adaptation of the same caliber. But it's the same studio, how is it different, you may ask? Well, firstly, it doesn't have every freelance animator known to man working on it. There's no second reason, that's literally all that's different. It's a normal, solid action show. It has that standard have 1 or 2 good cuts every episode approach, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do the episodes look perfect for what they are? Not really. There are a lot of off-model frames and the occasional questionable art direction, but that's like every other anime these days. It's not something exclusive to this show. Are we being overly critical simply because it's a Studio Mappa production? I wonder. I observed a similar thing back when Chainsawman was airing. A couple of episodes near the end didn't look as good as the rest. That is true, but people lost their minds. It was almost as if the show underwent a Black Clover or Boruto level of quality dip. Even the weakest Chainsaw Man episode, which was episode 11, looks better than 90% of what aired last year. It's a similar situation with Hell's Paradise, which obviously is nowhere near as good looking as Chainsaw Man. Is Mappa not allowed to face issues that every other studio faces? In fact, are they not allowed to undertake normal productions anymore? But how is it a normal production? Each episode has over 20 animation directors, we'll get to it. Wait. So, let's talk about the actual animation and address the issues regarding the same. The episodes don't have all that many standout cuts of animation. Each episode only has a tiny handful of them. It's the couple of good cuts per episode principle. The show does have some incredible effects. Gabimaru burning at the stake, him being boiled in oil, and his ninjutsu. All of these scenes look really good. The effects are probably the most consistent thing about this production. I really like the colorful flames. The show also has some great looking and heavily detailed frames and or looped cuts. This one for example. The thick outlines and the line work looks really good. This Kagenashi aka shadowless shot with the raw unprocessed look is really good as well. If you can't have constant movement, which is completely understandable, have some good looking limited cuts. I respect that. The first episode had some short little bursts of action animation here and there. This solid cut of Gabimaru dodging the attack and this decent first person shot for example. This fight had an all around respectable amount of movement. The first episode was probably the most consistent one. Although I do have some issues with this episode, I'll talk more about those in the compositing section. The second episode was definitely inferior in terms of quality. There were more off-model moments and weaker drawings compared to the first episode. The action was whatever. At least it was moving for the most part. The ground the fight was on looked really bad. This is just not good. But there was this one sequence near the end which looked top tier. It's probably corrected by Satoshi Iwataki, and it has a lot of movement. The body language is really good. This guy's throat getting ripped off is accompanied by smears all over his body, and the background is really well coordinated throughout this fight. Gabimaru's movements are so smooth and yet so heavy, it's incredible. The second half of the sequence felt visceral, with a surprising lack of censorship. Also loved Gabimaru's silhouette against the evening sky. It was an amazing scene all around. Almost makes you forget how flat the 5 minutes prior to it looked. The third episode is next and it opens up with this gorgeous yet unnerving sequence. The village chief has the strongest drawings in the entire show. The first fight between Gabimaru and this guy had very little movement and yet every hit felt impactful. Every strike had a lot of weight. I believe director Kaori Makita mentioned how she wanted the fights to feel heavy, and the team is doing a really good job at it. The show hides its lack of strong animation really well here. The perfectly timed camera shakes also help convey force, although that's more of a compositing thing, so I'll talk more about that later. Gabimaru's fight with Sagiri is really well done. It starts off with this long cut. Of course, it's not an intricately choreographed action scene, it's more of that I swing at you, you swing at me approach, but it's really impressive regardless. The dimming is really annoying, but there's nothing the studio can do about it. Japanese television laws are all over the place. As the fight continues, the choreography does step up. It's almost as if the combatants are regaining their bearings as the fight continues. Lots of movement can be seen throughout, and the fight ends with this incredible ink paint animation done by Zinkai, who did a similar thing for Dance Dance Danseur. The episode also contains CGI bugs, which look fine, there's nothing wrong with them. Episode 4 had quite a bit of action as well, most of which was in the form of short bursts of fast movement. There's a solid rotation shot present, although it can use some more polish. There is an awful case of melting in this cut, it's really rough. Aza's fight looks fairly underwhelming as well. It doesn't look bad, there are some heavy hits here and there, but as a whole, it's not the most impressive thing in the world. There's also a fair bit of digital blood present, a bit too much if I'm being honest. People lost their minds over the large amount of animation directors working on every episode. An animation director's job involves correcting the animation by fixing anatomical errors and making the movement as smooth as possible. And to be honest, the AD count is a bit telling. The amount of visual inconsistencies, weak drawings and off-model frames are likely the result of a very tight schedule, and the large number of animation directors are probably there to help with that, but it's not exactly working out all that well. Although a part of it may just be the producers having access to a lot of ADs. I will say this, looking at the AD count is an inaccurate way of determining the state of a production. Let's not make it a norm. The animation had some standout moments but also lacked consistency, but it's nowhere near as bad as some people make it out to be. In fact, I'm pretty sure casual viewers won't even notice most of these flaws. It's not that big of a deal. That sums up the animation. What's next? That's right, the compositing, which according to some is the most awful thing in the world. Well, awful, horrendous, terrible, these are all strong words. Let's tone it down. Is the compositing bad? Let's find out. Now, full disclosure, even I'm not that knowledgeable when it comes to this department, but let me try and explain what compositing is based on what I know. Compositing is the process of bringing each individual visual element together. This includes the foreground animation, the backgrounds, the CGI, the effects, you get the idea. The leading compositing artist is known as the director of photography. The DOP may also adjust the lighting, handle color corrections by changing the vibrance and the saturation. They might also add filters and blurs. Basically, the goal is to make each individual element fit in with the rest. Now that you have a basic idea of what compositing is, let me ask that question again. Is the compositing in Hell's Paradise bad? No, it's not. Is the compositing good? No, it's not. It's somewhere in the middle, leaning more towards the bad. But of course, that doesn't sit right with a certain portion of the audience. I want to highlight the main complaints that people have, but I can't since most people don't seem to elaborate on why the compositing is bad. Could it possibly be due to their lack of knowledge about this topic? Definitely not. Actual arguments are rare, but one of them involves the color green. Overuse of green overlays or filters. How dare a scene where everything is green in color look green? And here's my answer to that. Say it again, but slowly. Now this can be a legit issue. I had a similar problem with Attack on Titan Season 3 Part 2 where everything had this ugly shade of blue-green to it. But it's nowhere near as bad here. But I did say that the compositing leans more towards the bad side. Here's why. Firstly, the light blur that the background often has feels out of place. Secondly, the characters could fit in better. Maybe the blur is used because of how intricate and busy the backgrounds are. Maybe the blur is a way of making the characters fit in better. Who knows? My knowledge in this field is limited. A lot of people hated this one shot in particular. Personally, I think it's perfect. Because read the dialogue. Bright streaks of light coming down from the sky, isn't that the common way of visualizing paradise or heaven or anything of that nature? Believe it or not, there are some moments where the compositing shines. This scene, for example. The flowers feel way too vibrant and look out of place in this guy's hands. It's almost as if the flowers come from a different world, which is the whole point. Also love this sequence, although I'm not sure how much of the credit should go to the compositing. Also, the camera shakes help make up for the lack of animation, and they make some of the scenes feel more impactful. Of course, there are moments where the compositing reduces the quality. The lighting in the first episode lacked an organic feel. This room, for example, is way too perfectly lit despite torches being the only light source. Again, not sure how much of that blame should go to the compositing. Of course, I already mentioned the other issues. Thing is, different people expect different things from this department, so it's very subjective. But at the same time, if you think the compositing here is as bad as that awful filter work from Jujutsu Kaisen, you are delusional. Jujutsu Kaisen often looked unappealing, Hell's Paradise does not. And here's the most important thing. Not a single casual viewer gives two shits about any of this. Even I'm not too bothered. It's definitely a case of severe overreaction. Anime Twitter finding out about compositing was a huge mistake. It's a solid looking show overall. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's doing its thing. It doesn't look bad. That's about it. I don't have a good segue. Haikyuu is really good. Find out why by clicking the video on screen. Like and subscribe, and until next time.